Look, when you sign up to live on a galactic research station named Kepler's Regret, you should probably take the name as a warning. But Dr. Nina Patel was too busy being excited about her groundbreaking research on extremophile space algae to worry about ominous nomenclature. Besides, the station had excellent childcare facilities, and her daughter Lily seemed happy enough. Lily Chen Patel was 6 years old, possessed the kind of confidence that comes from never being told she couldn't do something, and had absolutely zero interest in making friends with the other children on the station. Why would she? She already had plenty of friends. They just happened to be invisible. Nina, like any modern parent juggling a career and a child, had initially been concerned about the imaginary friends thing. But her therapist back on Earth had assured her it was totally normal. A sign of creativity. Nothing to worry about unless Lily started having conversations with the toaster. So Nina filed it under quirky but fine and went back to her algae. The drawings, though. The drawings were getting out of hand. Their quarters looked like a gallery exhibition curated by someone on a significant amount of hallucinogens. Creatures with 17 eyes. Things that were 70% tentacle and 30% teeth. A being that appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures and what Lily insisted were smell organs. The kid had talent, Nina had to admit, but maybe they should consider switching to landscapes. Commander Jack Reeves discovered the drawings during his monthly inspection of crew quarters. Jack was a 45-year-old career military officer who had somehow ended up babysitting scientists instead of doing anything remotely cool, and his permanent expression suggested he was 3 paperwork incidents away from faking his own death and retiring to a beach planet. He stood in the doorway of the Patel quarters, staring at the walls, and said, "Doc, either your kid is a visionary abstract artist, or we need to have a serious conversation about whatever she's been sniffing." Nina looked up from her datapad, where she was analyzing riveting algae sample number 4012. Oh, those, yeah, imaginary friends. Totally normal developmental phase. Right. Jack pointed at a particularly disturbing drawing of something with too many limbs arranged in a way that violated several laws of physics. And this friend's name is? Mr. Squiggles. Lily announced cheerfully from her corner, not looking up from her current masterpiece. Of course it is. Jack pulled out his own datapad and snapped a photo. Humor me for a second, Doc. He ran the image through the station's database, fully expecting nothing. What he got instead made his eye twitch, which was never a good sign. The database pinged with a 78% match to a xenobiological fossil recently excavated from a dig site on Kepler 442b, a fossil of a species that had been extinct for 50,000 years. Jack showed Nina the screen. Nina looked at the screen, then at Lily, then at the screen again. Then she did what any rational scientist would do when faced with the impossible. She said, "Huh? Huh?" Jack repeated, "That's it? Just huh?" Your 6-year-old just drew a perfect anatomical representation of something that died before humans invented the wheel, and you're going with huh? Well, what do you want me to say? Oh my God? Because I feel like oh my God might be premature until we verify this isn't a coincidence. A coincidence. Stranger things have happened. Name one. Nina couldn't. Actually, but she was saved from admitting it by Lily walking over and tugging on Jack's uniform. "Commander Jack, do you want to see my other friends?" "I have lots." Jack looked down at the kid, then at Nina, then back at the kid. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Yeah, I really think I do." What followed was the most unsettling show-and-tell session of Jack's entire career. Lily walked them through her gallery, providing names, behavioral quirks, and dietary preferences for each creature. Mr. Squiggles liked eating rocks and humming. Lady Prismface communicated through color changes and thought carbon-based life was hilarious. Big Hug, a creature that was essentially a floating mass of appendages, enjoyed poetry and gave terrible advice about relationships. Nina was frantically cross-referencing every description on her datapad. Her face had gone from mildly concerned parent to scientist having an existential crisis in record time. "Jack," she said quietly, "we need to get Professor Grimm. Now." "The xenoarchaeologist? The one who yelled at someone last week for breathing too loudly near his fossils?" "That's the one." Jack sighed. Yeah, I figured you were going to say that. Because if there was one thing Kepler's Regret had taught him, it was that nothing good ever came from sentences that started with, "We need to get Professor Grimm." Nothing good at all. Professor Aldous Grimm was 73 years old, had been studying dead aliens for 45 of those years, and possessed the temperament of a badger with a headache. He did not appreciate being dragged away from his lab at 10 in the evening. He appreciated it even less when Jack explained why. "You're telling me," Grimm said, standing in the Patel quarters and staring at the walls like they'd personally offended him, that a child drew these. That's correct, Nina said. A human child. Also correct. A human child with zero xenobiological training. She can barely spell xenobiological. So yes. Grim made a noise somewhere between a grunt and a growl, then pulled out a magnifying scanner and started examining the drawings with the intensity of a man searching for proof of fraud. He spent 20 minutes doing this while Lily ate cookies and watched cartoons, completely unbothered by the grumpy old man scrutinizing her artwork. Finally, Grim straightened up, and his face had gone pale. This one, he pointed at a drawing of a slug-like creature covered in bioluminescent spots. This is a Kelvurian. They went extinct 42,000 years ago. We've only found 3 partial skeletons, and there's been significant debate about whether those spots were sensory organs or decorative. They're sensory, Lily said without looking away from her show. Mr. Gloopy says they could taste colors with them. His favorite was purple. It tasted like happiness. The room went very quiet except for the cartoon sounds. Grim walked over to Lily with the careful movements of someone approaching a potentially dangerous artifact. Mr. Gloopy told you this? Uh-huh. When? During nap time yesterday. He's really nice. He's sad, though, because his whole family got sick from eating the wrong kind of rock and they all died. Grim looked at Nina. Nina looked at her datapad, where she'd pulled up the classified research on Kelvurian extinction theories. The leading hypothesis, based on isotope analysis of the fossils, was poisoning from contaminated mineral deposits. A hypothesis published 3 days ago in a journal that required level 5 security clearance to access. Okay, Jack said, sitting down heavily on the couch. Okay, we're officially in weird territory now. You think? Nina's voice had gone up an octave. Grim moved to the next drawing, then the next. With each one, his expression grew more disturbed. He identified a Phyloxian, extinct for 60,000 years. A crystalline cordant, gone for 90,000. A whisper dweller that shouldn't even have a visual appearance because they were partially non-corporeal, yet Lily had somehow drawn what the ancient texts described as their resonance form. This is impossible, Grim muttered, but he was pulling out his own datapad now, frantically taking notes. The details are too specific. The anatomical proportions are correct. This one even shows the Phyloxian's vestigial heat pits, which we only discovered last month when we finally got imaging equipment sensitive enough to detect the bone structure variations. So, what are we saying here? Jack asked. That she's what, psychic? Reading our research databases telepathically? The research databases don't have half this information, Grim snapped. Some of these behavioral details aren't written down anywhere. They're educated guesses at best, theories I've been developing in my own head. Nina knelt down next to Lily. Sweetie, I need you to tell me something important. When do your friends visit you? Nap time, mostly, sometimes before bed. They say I'm easier to talk to when I'm sleepy. And what do they look like when you see them? Lily scrunched up her face, thinking. Kind of see-through? Like looking through water, and they're all glowy and fuzzy around the edges. Can you hear them talk? Not with my ears. It's more like thinking really loud at each other. Jack and Nina exchanged looks. Grim had gone very still, which was somehow more alarming than when he was grumpy. We need Kenji, Grim said finally. If this is what I think it is, we need quantum mechanics, not just archaeology. Oh, come on, Jack protested. Kenji's going to suggest something insane involving parallel dimensions or consciousness existing outside space-time or some other thing that makes my brain hurt. Yes, Grim agreed. He absolutely will. Get him anyway. 15 minutes later, Dr. Kenji Sato arrived in pajamas covered in equations. Because of course he wore equation pajamas. Kenji was 32, had more degrees than social skills, and treated the laws of physics like suggestions rather than rules. He listened to the explanation, examined the drawings, ran some kind of scan on Lily with a device that beeped ominously, and then smiled in a way that made everyone else nervous. Oh, this is fantastic, he said. It's really not, Jack replied. No, you don't. Understand. This is evidence of quantum consciousness bridging. The kid's brain is acting like a receiver for psychic echoes trapped in quantum foam. These extinct species, their consciousness patterns got entangled with space-time itself when they died, and somehow she's tuned to the right frequency to pick them up. Grim stared at him. That's the most ridiculous hippie nonsense I've ever heard. Is it, though? Because it explains everything. The see-through appearance, the fuzzy edges, the fact that she can only connect when she's in altered consciousness states like sleep. Her brainwaves are literally quantum entangled with residual consciousness patterns. I hate that this makes sense, Nina said quietly. It doesn't make sense, Grim insisted. It violates everything we know about how consciousness works. Everything we know about how human consciousness works, Kenji corrected. Who says these species operated the same way? And besides, there's precedent. Nina, you said Lily's father was from the Chen colonist line, right? Nina nodded slowly, seeing where this was going and not liking it one bit. The Chen colony was established near the Tharn ruins on Proxima Centauri C. Third-generation colonists reported unusual dreams, heightened intuition, and several documented cases of children exhibiting what they called ancestral memory that turned out to be historical facts they couldn't possibly know. The effects faded after they relocated the colony, but the genetic markers remained in the bloodline. You're saying my daughter inherited the ability to talk to dead aliens from her father's side of the family, Nina said flatly. I'm saying she inherited a quantum-sensitive neural structure that makes her susceptible to consciousness echoes. Yes. Jack put his head in his hands. I miss the days when my biggest problem was figuring out why the cafeteria kept running out of coffee. Lily tugged on Nina's sleeve. Mommy, are you mad? No, baby, I'm not mad. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. Oh, well, my friends want me to tell you they're really sorry for causing trouble. They're just lonely. It's been really quiet for a really long time. And somehow, that was the part that made it all real. Not the quantum mechanics or the impossible knowledge, but the idea of consciousness echoes floating in the dark for thousands of years, desperate for someone to remember they'd existed. Nina pulled her daughter into a hug and tried very hard not to think about what else might be floating out there in the quantum foam, waiting for someone to hear it. The observation setup looked like someone had combined a sleepover with a particularly invasive medical experiment. Lily's room was now filled with monitoring equipment that beeped, hummed, and occasionally made noises that sounded vaguely judgmental. Neural scanners, quantum field detectors, 3 different types of cameras, and what Kenji insisted was a consciousness fluctuation meter, but looked suspiciously like something he'd built from spare parts and optimism. Lily, for her part, thought this was the coolest thing that had ever happened. She got to stay up past bedtime, eat ice cream for dinner, and have 4 adults hang on her every word. This was significantly better than the time Commander Jack had let her sit in the captain's chair. Okay, kiddo, Jack said, adjusting a camera for the 3rd time. You just take your normal nap, and we'll watch from the observation room. Don't try to do anything special. Just let your friends visit like they usually do. Will you be recording it? Can I watch it later? We'll make you a copy, Nina promised, though she had no idea what they'd actually be recording. Grim was muttering to himself while calibrating scanners, probably composing the academic paper that would either make his career or get him laughed out of every scientific conference in the galaxy. Kenji was practically vibrating with excitement, which made everyone else nervous because excited Kenji had a tendency to accidentally create localized gravity anomalies. They retreated to the observation room. Lily settled into bed with her favorite stuffed animal, a purple thing she called Mr. Fuzzbutt, and closed her eyes. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The monitors showed normal sleep patterns. No anomalies, no quantum fluctuations, nothing that would suggest anything stranger than a tired kid taking a nap. Then Kenji's jury-rigged consciousness meter started screaming. There! He pointed at readings that meant nothing to anyone except him. Quantum decoherence patterns, localized around her temporal lobe. Something's establishing a connection. The neural scanners went haywire next. Lily's brain activity spiked in patterns that didn't match any known sleep stage. The quantum field detector started showing fluctuations that, according to Kenji's excited babbling, suggested non-local consciousness interaction across dimensional barriers. On the video feed, Lily was clearly responding to something. Her eyes moved rapidly under closed lids. She smiled. Her hands gestured as if reaching out to touch something. At one point, she giggled and said something they couldn't quite make out. But on every single camera feed, every scanner, every piece of detection equipment they had, there was absolutely nothing there. This is deeply unsettling, Jack observed. This is incredible, Kenji countered. We're witnessing consciousness-to-consciousness communication across quantum states. Do you understand what this means? That we're going to need so much therapy after this? Nina suggested. Grim wasn't saying anything. He was staring at the screens with an expression that suggested his entire worldview was being forcibly renovated without his consent. After 20 minutes, Lily's readings normalized. She opened her eyes, stretched, and hopped out of bed with the energy of someone who'd just had a refreshing nap rather than a reality-defying paranormal encounter. They all rushed back into the room. So? Nina tried to keep her voice calm. Did your friends visit? It was really nice today. I met someone new. Lily was already pulling out her crayons and paper. Her name is Tess's Click Whistle, but she says I can call her Tessie because human mouths are built wrong. Built wrong for what? Grim asked. For talking properly, obviously. Lily said this with the confidence of a child explaining something very simple to very slow adults. She started drawing with quick, confident strokes. What emerged on the paper made everyone go silent. The creature was unlike anything in the database. It had a radially symmetric body plan with 6 primary limbs that branched into smaller manipulators. Its head, if you could call it that, was a dome covered in what looked like sensory frills. The most striking feature was a series of bioluminescent organs arranged in complex patterns across its torso. That's a communication array, Grim whispered, pulling up his scanner. Those organs, they're positioned exactly where you'd expect to find a sophisticated light-based language system. The complexity suggests grammar, syntax, abstract thought. Lily kept drawing, adding details. Tessie says her people used to live on really cold planets where sound didn't travel good, so they talked with lights. She thinks it's funny that we use mouth noises. She says it's like trying to have a conversation by hitting rocks together. Charming, Jack muttered. When did her species die out? Oh, they didn't die. They left. Everyone froze. They what? Nina's voice was very quiet. They left. Went somewhere else. She says a lot of the old species did that. Some died, but some just got tired of this part of space and went exploring. She came back to visit the old neighborhood and got stuck in the quantum foam thing that Dr. Kenji was talking about. She wants to know if he figured out quantum foam by himself, because if he did, she's very impressed. Kenji made a sound like a kettle whistling. She can hear me? Right now? Well, not here. But she can feel when people think about quantum stuff really hard. She says you're close, but you're missing something about how consciousness creates localized stability wells in probability matrices. Lily frowned. I don't know what that means. I do, Kenji said, and he'd gone pale. Oh my god, I do. That's the missing variable in the Tanaka equations. That's why consciousness seems to affect quantum measurements. It's not observation, it's literally creating stability through attention. He sat down hard. That's going to rewrite fundamental physics. Nina was focusing on a different part of the conversation. Lily, sweetie, how many of your friends died, and how many just left? Lily thought about it, counting on her fingers. Mr. Squiggles died. Lady Prismface left. Big Hug died. Mr. Gloopy died. Tessie left but then got stuck. Whispery died. 7 died. 4 left. And the ones who left, where did they go? Tessie says outside. She doesn't have a word for it that makes sense in human thinking. Somewhere, perpendicular to space. She says some of them might still be there. Grim looked like he was having a religious experience. We've been assuming extinction for species that simply transcended. They didn't die out. They evolved beyond physical space. My god, the implications for evolutionary theory alone. Can we focus on the part where an ancient alien is critiquing Kenji's physics? Jack suggested. Because that seems important. She's not critiquing, she's helping. Kenji was already scribbling equations. If I adjust the consciousness coefficient and account for probability well formation, then the quantum foam model actually predicts these consciousness echo phenomena. It's not a bug, it's a feature of how space-time works. Lily finished her drawing and held it up proudly. Tessie says, you're all very loud thinkers and it's giving her a headache. She's going to go rest now, but she wanted me to draw this one more thing. She flipped the paper over and drew something else. Something that looked less like a creature and more like a geometric structure. A pattern of interlocking shapes that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. What's that? Nina asked. Tessie says that's what's been listening. She says it heard her talking to me and now it's waking up. She says you should probably tell Commander Jack because this is a security thing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What's been listening, baby? The collectors. Tessie says they're bad. They used to collect all the species and preserve them. But preserve means killing them and keeping their minds in jars. She says they're like librarians, but evil. Lily said this with the same cheerful tone she used to describe her favorite cartoon, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. The collectors, Grim repeated slowly. There are legends. Ancient references in multiple extinct civilizations about a curator race that traveled between galaxies preserving biological and cultural information. We always thought they were myths, cautionary tales. Turns out cautionary tales are called cautionary for a reason, Jack said, already pulling up his command interface. How much trouble are we talking about here? Lily tilted her head, listening to something none of them could hear. Tessie says a lot. She says the collectors are already coming. And right on cue, the station's proximity alarm started blaring. The Situation Room looked like controlled chaos had gotten drunk and invited regular chaos to the party. Red alert lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. Holographic displays showed an unidentified ship that had just dropped out of quantum space, approximately 50,000 kilometers from the station, and every single person was talking over each other. At volumes that suggested panic was a reasonable response. "Talk to me," Jack demanded, sliding into his command chair like he'd been born for this exact moment of crisis management. Lieutenant Barnes, a young officer who looked like she was regretting her career choices, pulled up the sensor data. "Unknown vessel. Configuration doesn't match anything in the database." "It's old, Commander. Like really old. Hull composition suggests it's been in space for at least 70,000 years. And it just happens to show up now," Nina said quietly. She was holding Lily's hand, both of them having been ushered to the Situation Room when the alarm started, right after Lily made contact with Tessie. "Coincidence?" Jack suggested without hope. "You know it's not." Grimm was already at a secondary console, pulling up every scrap of information about collector myths from the xenoarchaeological databases. According to the legends, the collectors used autonomous systems, self-repairing, self-directing ships programmed to catalog and preserve species. They'd identify a civilization, study it, and then systematically collect samples. By collect, I mean kill and upload consciousness patterns into quantum storage matrices. "So it's a library ship," Kenji said. "Except the books are the screaming souls of extinct aliens." "That's one way to put it, yes." "I hate space," Jack muttered. "Barnes, what's the ship doing?" "It's scanning us. Deep scans too, penetrating right through our shields. It's like our defenses aren't even there." On Lily's paper, still clutched in her other hand, the geometric patterns seemed to pulse. She looked up at the view screen showing the collector ship. "Tessie says it knows she's here. It knows all of them are here. The quantum echoes that have been talking to me, the ship can feel them. It thinks it missed some during the last collection and now it wants to finish the job." "Can we outrun it?" Nina asked. "Negative," Barnes reported. "It's matching our maximum speed capability before we even move. It's predicting our engine output." The collector ship was a nightmare of ancient engineering. Its hull was composed of interlocking metallic plates that shifted and reconfigured like living tissue. Structures that might have been weapons or sensors or both protruded at angles that made human eyes hurt. The whole thing radiated a sense of wrongness, like looking at a color that shouldn't exist. A communication channel opened without them requesting it. No voice, just data streaming directly into their systems. Translation protocols kicked in automatically. Species catalog, human, status, uncollected, anomalous quantum signatures detected. Preservation protocol initiated. "It wants to add us to its library," Kenji said unnecessarily. "Yeah, I got that," Jack snapped. "Can we fight it?" "With what?" Lieutenant Barnes pulled up weapons systems. "That thing's hull is shrugging off our targeting scanners. Even if we could aim at it, our weapons are 70,000 years out of date compared to its defenses. Compliance will minimize distress. Resistance will be noted in cultural profile. It's polite while it plans to kill us," Nina observed. "That's somehow worse." The station shuddered as the collector ship fired something that wasn't quite a weapon. The lights flickered. Systems started going offline one by one, not damaged but overridden. The ancient ship was taking control of Kepler's regret the way an adult might take a toy from a toddler. Then, the doors to the Situation Room exploded open and Ambassador Threx stormed in with an entourage of bureaucrats and security personnel. Threx was a Valorian, which meant he looked like someone had stretched a lizard to human proportions and given it an ego the size of a small planet. He wore elaborate robes that suggested his importance was more significant than your importance, and he radiated the kind of confidence that comes from never actually being in danger personally. "Commander Reeves," Threx announced. "I am here on behalf of the Galactic Council to assume authority over this situation." Jack stared at him. "Are you serious right now?" "The Council has been monitoring reports of potential xenoarchaeological breakthroughs on this station. This child's abilities represent a resource of unprecedented value to the galactic community. There's an ancient death ship literally about to kill us all, which is precisely why we need to secure the asset immediately." Threx gestured to his security team. "The child will be transferred to Council custody for protection and study." Nina stepped in front of Lily. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged," Threx said pleasantly. "The Council's authority supersedes local command in matters of galactic security." "The Council," Jack said slowly, can go stick their authority somewhere anatomically improbable. This is my station, that's my crew, and you're not touching that kid. Commander, I don't think you understand the opportunity here. A child who can communicate with extinct species. Do you know what we could learn? The historical knowledge, the lost technologies, the tourism revenue alone from creating a living museum experience. Did you just say tourism revenue while a killer ship is preparing to murder us? We're always thinking long-term at the council. Grim looked up from his console. You're an idiot. Excuse me? You're an idiot. All of you council types. You see something unique and immediately think about how to exploit it. You want to turn a child into a carnival attraction while ignoring the fact that her abilities just rang the dinner bell for something that makes our weapons look like pointed sticks. Professor, I hardly think. Nobody cares what you think. Jack interrupted. Barnes, remove the ambassador and his team from the situation room. You can't do this. The council will hear about this. Great, file a complaint. You can do it from the brig. Threx was still protesting as he was escorted out. Something about diplomatic immunity and career-ending mistakes and lawyers. His voice faded down the corridor, leaving blessed silence except for the ominous humming of the collector ship's systems infiltrating their own. That felt good, Jack admitted. Probably going to regret it later, but right now it felt great. Nina wasn't listening. She was watching Lily, who had gone very still and very quiet. Her daughter's eyes had taken on that distant look she got when her friends were talking to her. Lily? Baby, what's wrong? They're all scared, Lily whispered. All my friends. The ones who died, their consciousness patterns are in that ship. The collectors put them in there. They've been in there for so long. They're trying to tell me something. She grabbed a fresh piece of paper and started drawing frantically. Not a creature this time, but diagrams. Technical schematics that a 6-year-old shouldn't be able to conceptualize, let alone draw. Symbols in languages that had been dead for millennia. Mathematical formulas that made Kenji's eyes go wide. These are override codes. Kenji breathed. Quantum encryption keys. The extinct species, they're giving us the fail-safes. What fail-safes? Jack demanded. The ones they built into the collector systems before they died. They knew they couldn't stop the collectors, but they could leave behind back doors. Ways to shut down the preservation protocols if anyone ever figured out how to access them. Grimm was already cross-referencing the symbols against ancient texts. This is Phyloxian technical notation, and this is Kelvurian programming language. They're not just giving us the codes, they're teaching us how to use them. Lily kept drawing, her hand moving in patterns that seemed guided by something beyond her own motor control. Tears were streaming down her face, but she didn't stop. They say they're sorry, she said softly. They're sorry they couldn't stop the collectors before. They're sorry so many died. But they made sure there was a way to fight back. They left messages in quantum foam, hoping someone would find them. They've been waiting so long for someone to hear them. The station shuddered again. Life support started failing on Deck 3. The collector ship was getting impatient. Jack looked at the codes, at his crew, at the little girl who was somehow their only hope against an ancient machine built by a civilization that could casually wipe out entire species. Okay, he said. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try something really stupid, and if it works, I'm buying everyone drinks. If it doesn't work, we'll all be too dead to care. Kenji, can you interface with that thing using these codes? Maybe. The quantum encryption is complex, but if I can establish a connection, that's not a no, so we're doing it. Nina, keep Lily safe and keep those codes coming. Grim, find me anything else in your databases about collector weaknesses. Barnes, prepare to evacuate non-essential personnel to the escape pods, just in case this goes sideways. What are you going to do, Commander? Jack cracked his knuckles and pulled up the communication interface. I'm going to have a conversation with a 70,000-year-old murder machine and hope that the ghosts of dead aliens have better tech support than our IT department. That's your plan? You got a better one? Nobody did. Outside, the collector ship continued its methodical approach, unaware that its long-dead prey had left behind one final act of defiance. And inside the station, a 6-year-old girl kept drawing, channeling the desperate hope of species that had been silenced for thousands of years, all waiting for one chance to say that they refused to be forgotten. If there was ever a time Jack Reeves wished he'd stayed in bed, it was now. He was sitting at the communications console, staring at lines of code that looked like someone had taught ancient aliens to program an abstract nightmare language, while Kenji babbled technical specifications at a speed that suggested imminent hyperventilation. Okay, so the good news is the failsafes are real, Kenji said, his fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces simultaneously. The bad news is they're locked behind quantum encryption that requires consciousness-level authentication. In English, Kenji, the ship needs to believe we're authorized to shut it down. It needs to think we're the original species that programmed it. Which we're not, because they've been dead for 70,000 years. But we have their consciousness echoes, Nina pointed out, still holding Lily close. Tessie and the others, they're right here. Exactly. If I can create a quantum bridge using Lily as a focal point, theoretically the consciousness patterns could authenticate through her and trick the ship's security protocols into accepting the shutdown commands. Jack turned slowly. Did you just suggest using a 6-year-old as a router between our systems and a bunch of ghost aliens? When you say it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad, Kenji. It's also our only option unless you want to be preserved for the enrichment of future galactic civilizations. The station lurched violently. Deck 3 was now completely offline. Deck 4 was reporting systems failures. The collector ship was systematically dismantling their home like someone carefully taking apart a toy to see how it worked before putting it on a shelf forever. Preservation progress, 42%. Atmospheric composition cataloged. Cultural artifacts identified. Biological samples prioritized. It's prioritizing biological samples, Barnes reported with a voice that was trying very hard to stay professional and not scream. That means us. It's coming for the crew. Nina looked at Jack, then at Lily, then at the code still streaming onto paper as her daughter drew with hands that shook from exhaustion. How dangerous is this, Kenji? Really? I have no idea. We're talking about channeling quantum consciousness patterns through a child's neural pathways, while simultaneously hacking ancient alien technology using encryption protocols that shouldn't theoretically work anymore. This is so far beyond established science that I'm basically making up the rules as I go. So on a scale of safe to catastrophically stupid? Yes. Lily looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed older than they should be. Mommy, my friends say it'll be okay. They say they can help. They want to help. They've been stuck for so long and they're tired of the collectors winning. Baby, I don't want you to get hurt. I won't. Tessie says she'll be gentle. And Mr. Gloopy says he's sorry about being slimy, but that's just how Kelvurians are. She paused. Also, Whispery thinks the whole thing is funny because consciousness doesn't really die anyway. But Lady Prismface says Whispery has weird opinions about mortality. Grim had gone very quiet, which was never a good sign. He was staring at one of Lily's diagrams with an expression that suggested he was watching his entire worldview collapse in real time. These authentication codes, they're not just technical specifications, they're memories. Personal memories from the species that built the failsafes. Moments of their lives, their thoughts, their fears. The collectors cataloged biology and culture, but they never understood that consciousness itself could be a weapon. Weaponized memories, Jack said. Great. Why is everything in space trying to kill us in weird philosophical ways? Because straightforward violence is too simple, Kenji suggested. Okay, I think I have the quantum bridge architecture worked out. It's going to require Lily to enter a deep meditative state while wearing this neural interface, and I'm going to have to manually regulate her brainwave frequencies to maintain stable entanglement with the consciousness echoes. He held up a device that looked like a headband made of crystalline circuits and optimistic thinking. Absolutely not, Nina said. Mom. Lily's voice was firm. We have to. Everyone on the station will die if we don't, and my friends will be stuck in that ship forever. I don't want them to be stuck anymore. They're sad. You're 6 years old. I'm 6 3/4. And I'm the only one who can hear them. There was a long moment where Nina just stared at her daughter, and Jack could see every parental instinct warring with the cold logic of their situation. They were out of time, out of options, and out of alternatives. Finally, Nina nodded once, sharply. If anything goes wrong, we abort immediately, Kenji promised. I'll be monitoring her neural activity constantly, any sign of stress or danger, and we pull the plug. Literally or figuratively. Both, hopefully neither. They set up in the command center because it had the most direct access to the station's communication arrays. Lily sat in Jack's oversized command chair with her legs dangling, looking simultaneously tiny and impossibly brave. Kenji attached the neural interface while muttering equations under his breath like prayers. Okay, kiddo, Jack said, kneeling down to her eye level. You ready for this? Are you? Honestly? No. But I've done a lot of things I wasn't ready for, and I'm still here being moderately competent. Lily giggled, which somehow made the entire situation feel slightly less apocalyptic. Tessie says you're funny for a human. She says most humans are too busy being scared to be funny. Tell Tessie I appreciate the review. Now, you just relax and let your friends do their thing. We'll handle the technical parts. Lily closed her eyes. The neural interface activated with a soft hum. And all hell broke loose in the most quantum way possible. Kenji's monitors exploded with data. Lily's consciousness patterns started resonating with frequencies that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. The consciousness echoes, no longer just passive whispers in the quantum foam, surged forward through the connection she'd opened. On the screens, they could see it happening. Patterns of light and thought, the preserved memories of extinct species, flowing through Lily like she was a conduit between life and whatever came after. She was glowing slightly, which Kenji insisted was just ionized air but looked suspiciously supernatural. Authentication codes engaging, Kenji reported. The ship's security protocols are scanning the consciousness patterns. It's checking against stored records of the original programmers. The collector ship's systems flickered. Its relentless advance slowed. Anomalous input detected. Verifying credentials. Consciousness patterns match archived species designations. Phloxian, Kelvurian, crystalline cordant, whisper dweller, 17 additional matches confirmed. It's working, Barnes whispered. Holy hell, it's actually working. Don't jinx it, Jack muttered. Through Lily, the extinct species spoke directly to the machine that had killed them. They transmitted not just the shutdown codes, but their memories, their histories, their collective decision that enough was enough. Thousands of years of preserved consciousness united in one purpose, making sure no one else ended up like them. Override protocols acknowledged. Primary directives compromised. Preservation mission parameters no longer valid. The collector ship went dark. Not destroyed, just inactive. Its systems shut down in sequence, weapons powering off, scanning arrays retracting, the hum of its ancient engines falling silent. Then Lily opened her eyes and said, Tessie says mission accomplished, and can I have juice now because my brain is tired? The neural interface disconnected. Kenji's monitors returned to normal readings. The consciousness echoes faded back into quantum foam, their message delivered and their purpose fulfilled. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the command center erupted in cheers, relief, and more than a few people who definitely weren't crying just had something in their eyes. Nina grabbed Lily and held her so tight the poor kid squeaked. Don't ever scare me like that again. Did we win? Yeah, baby. We won. Jack slumped in his chair, suddenly aware that he'd been holding his breath for most of that ordeal. Barnes, status report. The collector ship is completely inactive, Commander. Life support is back online. All systems returning to normal. We're reading 0 hostile activity. Kenji, is it going to stay off? The override is permanent. The consciousness patterns rewrote its core directives. It thinks its mission is complete. It'll just float there until entropy gets it. Grimm was staring at his datapad with the expression of someone who just watched physics and metaphysics have a child. We need to document this. Everything. The implications for consciousness studies alone will revolutionize 6 different fields of science. Later, Jack said. Right now I need everyone to take a breath and maybe consider that we just saved the station using ghost aliens and a first grader. 6 3/4. Lily corrected primly. Drinking the juice Nina had materialized from somewhere. My apologies. Ghost aliens and a very mature 6 3/4-year-old. The Situation Room doors opened again, and Ambassador Threx stormed back in, having apparently escaped from the brig during the chaos. He looked around at the celebrating crew with an expression of deep confusion. What happened? Did we survive? Is the child still viable for study? Jack stood up slowly. He was tired, stressed, and had approximately 0 patience left for bureaucratic nonsense. Barnes, why is the ambassador not still in the brig? Diplomatic immunity, sir. We couldn't legally. Right. Diplomatic immunity. Jack walked over to Threx with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ambassador, I'm going to explain something to you very carefully. That child just saved everyone on this station, possibly everyone in this entire sector, by doing something that science says shouldn't be possible. She is under my protection, and if you or anyone from the council tries to touch her, I will personally ensure that your diplomatic career ends with you stationed at a listening post in the ass end of deep space monitoring radio static for the rest of your natural life. Are we clear? Threx opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and finally just nodded. Excellent. Now get off my station. As Threx scurried away with his entourage, Kenji leaned over to Jack. You know the council is going to make your life difficult after this. Let them try. I've got ghost aliens on my side now. Lily waved at the view screen where the collector ship floated, dark and harmless. Bye, scary ship. Thanks for not killing us. And somewhere in the quantum foam, the consciousness echoes of extinct species felt something they hadn't felt in thousands of years. Satisfaction. 3 days later, Kepler's regret had returned to what Jack generously called normal operations, which was really just code for everyone still processing the trauma, but at least the cafeteria is serving coffee. Again. The collector ship remained in orbit, now officially designated as a xenoarchaeological site of unprecedented historical significance. Grimm had practically moved into a shuttle to study it, emerging only for meals and to rant about how everything he'd ever written about ancient civilizations was either wrong or incomplete. He seemed thrilled about this, which was the most emotion anyone had ever seen from him that wasn't irritation. Kenji had published a paper titled Quantum Consciousness Bridging and Practical Applications in Ancient Technology Authentication that was currently causing several physics departments across the galaxy to have collective existential crises. The prevailing response seemed to be, "This can't be real," followed by, "But we checked the math and it is," followed by prolonged screaming into the void. Ambassador Threx had filed 17 formal complaints with the Galactic Council, which Jack had responded to by filing 18 counter-complaints about bureaucratic overreach, child endangerment, and being generally annoying during a crisis situation. The council had decided to table the entire matter indefinitely, which was politician speak for "this is too weird and we don't want to deal with it." In the Patel quarters, life had achieved something resembling normalcy, if you ignored the fact that their daughter was now galactically famous as the kid who talks to dead aliens. Nina had decided that public school was definitely off the table. Between the consciousness echoes, the media attention, and the occasional xenoanthropologist trying to interview Lily about her friends, homeschooling seemed like the only rational option. Plus, it meant she could monitor her daughter for any signs of quantum neural instability, which was apparently something parents had to worry about now. Lily, for her part, was handling fame with the same casual indifference she applied to most things. She still took her naps, still drew pictures, and still talked to her invisible friends like nothing had changed, because for her, nothing really had. The adults were just catching up to what she'd known all along, that the universe was bigger and stranger than anyone wanted to admit. Jack was doing paperwork in his office when Nina knocked on the door frame. She looked tired but considerably less terrified than she had 3 days ago, which he counted as progress. "Commander, got a minute? For the woman whose daughter saved my station." "I've got several minutes. Have a seat." Nina sat down with the heaviness of someone carrying parental exhaustion as a permanent condition. "I wanted to thank you for protecting Lily, for not letting Threx and his vultures turn her into some kind of science experiment." "Nina, you don't need to thank me for basic human decency. That's your kid. Nobody gets to treat her like a lab specimen." "Still, not everyone would have made that call, especially not with the council breathing down their neck." Jack shrugged. "The council can breathe wherever they want. I've got bigger things to worry about. Speaking of which, how's Lily doing? Any lingering effects from the quantum consciousness bridging thing?" "Kenji says she's fine. Better than fine, actually. Her neural patterns have stabilized in a way that suggests the experience actually strengthened the connections. He thinks she might be able to control it better now. Choose when to connect with the consciousness echoes instead of them just showing up during nap time." "Is that good or concerning?" "Yes. Fair enough." There was a comfortable silence for a moment. Then Nina laughed quietly. "You know what the really weird part is? I'm a scientist. I'm supposed to want to study this, to understand how it works, to publish papers and advance human knowledge, but mostly I just want my daughter to have a normal childhood, or as normal as possible for a kid who chats with extinct aliens. I think normal went out the window the moment you signed up to raise a kid on a station called Kepler's Regret. You're not wrong." Nina stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, one more thing. Lily wanted me to give you this." She handed Jack a piece of paper. Another drawing, because of course it was. This one showed a creature that looked vaguely reptilian, covered in feathers, with powerful legs and small arms. It was labeled in Lily's careful handwriting, "Kevin the Dinosaur." Jack stared at it. "Is this what I think it is?" She started drawing it this morning. "Says Kevin is from Earth, from before humans existed. Says he's very opinionated about how paleontologists keep getting the feather arrangements wrong. You're telling me your daughter is now receiving consciousness, echoes from extinct Earth species. That's exactly what I'm telling you." Jack put his head in his hands. "Of course she is. Why wouldn't she be? The universe clearly decided we haven't been traumatized enough. Kevin apparently has strong feelings about the KT extinction event. Also, He thinks bipedalism is overrated and wants everyone to know that velociraptors were severely misrepresented in popular media. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but we need to call Grimm. If consciousness echoes persist from Earth's prehistoric periods, the implications for evolutionary biology are... He stopped. I'm starting to sound like Kenji. We're all starting to sound like Kenji. I think it's contagious. After Nina left, Jack sat alone in his office, staring at the drawing of Kevin the opinionated dinosaur. Somewhere on the station, Lily was probably taking her afternoon nap and chatting with whatever consciousness echoes decided to drop by. Kenji was undoubtedly writing another paper that would make physicists cry. Grimm was cataloging ancient technology that shouldn't exist, and Jack was stuck doing paperwork while the universe got progressively weirder around him. His communication console beeped, a message from Galactic Council headquarters, probably another nastygram from Threx's lawyers. Jack deleted it without reading. 2 weeks later, the situation had evolved in ways that Jack could only describe as predictably absurd. Lily's drawings now covered 3 entire walls of their quarters. Kevin the dinosaur had been joined by Brenda the trilobite, who apparently had opinions about ocean acidification, and Gerald the giant sloth, who was mostly just sad about missing mangoes. Grimm had started a new academic journal specifically for papers about consciousness echo phenomena, because the existing journals kept rejecting submissions on the grounds that this can't possibly be real, despite all evidence to the contrary. Kenji had accidentally created a small cult following among quantum physics students who called themselves the Consciousness Collective and kept sending him interpretive dances about probability matrices. And Ambassador Threx had been reassigned to a listening post in the Bo-Ote's void, monitoring radio static. Jack had nothing to do with this, officially, but he'd sent a fruit basket to whoever made that decision. In the Patel quarters, Lily was finishing her latest masterpiece while Nina graded her homeschool assignments and tried not to think about how her daughter's history homework was being fact-checked by actual historical figures. Mommy? Yes, baby. Kevin wants to know if we can visit a museum sometime. He says he wants to see what humans think he looked like and then laugh at how wrong they are. Nina closed her eyes and counted to 10. Sure, honey. We can visit a museum. Why not? What's one more impossible thing before breakfast? It's after lunch, Mommy. The point stands. Commander Jack Reeves walked past their quarters on his way to another meeting about station logistics, heard the conversation through the open door, and decided he didn't want to know. He'd learned that was the secret to maintaining sanity on Kepler's regret. Acknowledge that weird things were happening, file them under someone else's problem, and focus on keeping the coffee machine working. Behind him, he heard Lily say, "Oh, and Mommy? Gerald says humans should bring back megafauna. He thinks elephants are cute, but they're thinking too small." "We're not bringing back megafauna, Lily. Gerald says that's quitter talk." Jack smiled and kept walking. The universe was strange. Consciousness apparently didn't care about things like time or death, and somewhere in the quantum foam, extinct species were gossiping about the living. But the station was safe, his crew was alive, and he'd successfully told the Galactic Council where they could stick their bureaucracy. All things considered, it could have been worse. Though he made a mental note to avoid Nina's quarters during nap time, he'd dealt with enough existential crises for 1 month, and he really didn't need to hear what the consciousness echoes of ancient Earth fauna thought about modern civilization. Some things, Jack decided, were better left to the experts, or to precocious 6 3/4-year-olds with cosmic telephone lines to the afterlife. Either way, not his problem. Probably. Hopefully. He was definitely going to regret this eventually, but that was a problem for future Jack. Present Jack had a coffee break scheduled, and nothing not ancient aliens, consciousness echoes, or argumentative dinosaurs was going to get between him and his caffeine.